Hello, and welcome to the Emotional Endurance Movement Conversations, where we talk about all the lemons in the room and how we are coping with them. And this week, we are talking about the fundamentals of what we've built our company on, which is emotional exhaustion.
Yeah.
The research and the data shows that most of us are emotionally exhausted. What do you think, Crimson?
I think that's what's been missing. And to be fair, I think that people are dying to have this conversation because they're
Yeah.
like literally feel like they're dying inside right now.
And they don't even know how to talk about it. One of the things that's been interesting about doing this work is we've really been trying to develop the language to talk about it. And I think there's something happening that a lot of us are doing, which is that we are running ourselves to completely empty on our emotional energy. And then we are forcing ourselves to push through even further. And by doing so, we're really damaging our health, our well being, and our quality of life. And we're usually doing so because we're coping ineffectively. There's something challenging that maybe we're avoiding or reacting to or projecting onto someone or someplace else. And it ends up being really messy. And I've seen this play out in my life in such a key way. And honestly, this is kind of a hard one to talk about, but I do think it needs to be said that this has a key part in how I came to want to develop this product. And that's that when I was running my first business, the practice, I got to a point where I was completely emotionally exhausted. Like I didn't really have energy in the tank for much of anything. And I felt like I just had no other choice but to stay there, to keep pushing through. And now that I'm about a year, a little more than a year post the sale and moving away from that venture, I realized that there were off ramps for me prior to me taking the off ramp. And I think I waited until we were in a state of like, I really had to do something and make a reactive decision when I probably could have made a difficult decision 6 months, a year, even 2 years prior. Part of this is the messiness of entrepreneurship. And I don't want to beat up on myself for having done what many entrepreneurs have done, which is learned hard lessons through business, you know? But the biggest win of all of that is that ultimately at the end of it, and I do think I could have done it sooner, but at the end of it, I chose my mental health. I chose to get off of that track and find one that was better for me. And we've talked about this a lot about leaving is not always the answer. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But I think that if I had responded to my depletion sooner, I would have had more options on the table. And that is the regret that I have because I really just stopped taking care of myself. And it's kind of ironic, right? The owner of a group practice, the therapist themselves, stopping taking care of themselves. And I think it really speaks to how common of a challenge this is. And I wish that I had attended to that challenge more proactively.
I think you hit on something that we've discussed many times, and that we know, I think as a collective, we know that this is true. It's that really we avoid dealing with anything until it comes to a head because we know how much work it is to get through things. And it's very hard. It's a muscle you train in your brain, right? To take on the hard things. And I think that's part of why we have the emotional endurance movement is because when you reflect on situations like what you went through, it is avoiding dealing with something you know you're going to have to deal with until it gets to a place that's unhealthy.
Absolutely.
So, no
It,
judgment. That's a very human. I think we all relate to that in so many ways, from the macro to the micro and decisions we make.
yeah, for sure. And I do think that discomfort was something that I was actively avoiding. One of the biggest pieces is the discomfort that I knew it was going to cause people for me to choose my mental health. Like, I can't act like that wasn't a piece of this puzzle. And that discomfort remains today. It's present. It was the right decision for me to offboard. I'm so excited about what's coming next and where we're going with this. And I think I will always carry that heaviness of knowing that I made a choice for me that impacted other people. But like, we got to be real. That happens all day, every day.
Yes. I mean, and we got to be real about talking about it that way, whether it be a business venture, a relationship, a friendship, any kind of relationship, any dynamic, right? Like, I think we all struggle with not realizing that it's okay to mourn that those things are ending. It's okay to mourn the evolution. I mean, if you think of it like a snake shedding its skin, when that skin is shed, that is something to take note of and to realize and to see. I like the snake analogy. I hate snakes though, but I like the snake analogy because snakes can see where they came from. They can see their growth. It's so much harder, especially in the space of emotional growth, to see the improvement. I think even internally, if you're not doing that audit, you don't even see it. It's just this evolution. Then one day you wake up and you're like, well, I'm doing better.
Yeah.
I'm making better decisions. And so I always think the snake analogy of growth and evolution of a human is interesting because we just don't have the sheddings. You know, it's like
Yeah.
once you hit like 20, like you don't have any evidence of growth. You only have evidence of deterioration. Like I feel like, I mean, especially 30, it's like all downhill from there physically. And it's like instead of seeing your growth, you're seeing your diminishing. But what matters is this growth. And if we clung to the growth of this as much as we clung to the growth of our physical fitness, I think we would live in a happier place where we could have those moments of joy in our day-to-day life more.
For sure. I think a more empowered, grounded place where we can check in and see the things that are happening all around us. Like when I look back on everything that I went through with this particular situation, and it's still fresh. It's interesting because like as a speaker, you got to know when you're ready to like tell a story on stage. I'm not ready to tell a story on stage yet. I'm ready to talk about this. I'm still processing it. I'm still exploring it. And the thing that keeps coming up is how I just really abandoned myself in the middle of it to attend to the way I thought things were supposed to be, you know?
Oh, the way I thought things were supposed to be. I mean, if I wrote a book, I feel like that would be the title of my book because I just wish I would have had that perspective in life
Oh, for
that
sure.
it's never the way you think it's going to be,
No,
unfortunately.
it's somebody told me that once, like, you know, like we always expect our life to look a certain way, but it never does. And that really struck me. Like, that's right. I've never had a situation where like I've imagined it or visualized it beforehand and it's gone exactly right. I think we have to lean into the fact that it won't, you know, and that's part of the beauty.
Yeah.
That's part of the absurdity when we keep
Yes.
telling ourselves well, I should it once my business looks like this, then I'll feel emotionally fulfilled. Then I'll feel like I can manage the stress or I can balance or whatever the story is. And if you are not paying attention and you're not engaging in that way, it becomes very easy to just get into a cycle of avoidance and wake up one day and say, wait a second, none of this works.
Isn't that the truth? We just get in these cycles of avoidance. And I think it's mostly because life is just hard.
It is
I think when you're in,
challenges and triggers everywhere.
well, I think that goes to exhaustion and burnout, right?
Yeah.
How often are our cups full enough to take on the challenges that we face day to day?
Yeah. Yeah.
I know mine's not full often. I mean, so I'm not judging people. And those that have full cups, like, that's amazing.
Well, and I think this is where the small steps really matters. And I understand that small steps are not sexy, but a lot of what we're talking about is the emotional hygiene, the stuff that you do day to day to help keep yourself regulated so you're more likely to show up and stay regulated regardless of how dysregulated the environment is around you. This is where making those small choices every day, even just the choice of staying aware and choosing to pay attention to avoidance. I like to say avoidance is like the high interest credit card of coping skills. And like many of us overuse it. There is a time and place to use it, but there's also a high cost to utilizing it. So we want to make sure that we're
Yeah.
using it right. And what happens, just like with credit cards, is, like once you've avoided one thing, you're more likely to avoid something else and avoid something else. And you wake up totally depleted when the truth is that if you had just been paying attention, there would have been micro steps, little, I've heard them described as like little mental health snacks. But, we can also say coping skills, things that
Yes.
help you stay keyed in and help you to not only regulate your emotions in the moment, because remember, your emotional regulation does impact everybody, but it's really for you. It's something you're doing to take care of you. And if you show up more regulated routinely, this starts to have an overall good preventative effect. And what I found after I left the business is that it took about a year, honestly, to get out of the crisis mode of that business. And it
Right.
still kind of sneaks up on me sometimes. And I can just feel how different that space feels versus where I am now, which is not without challenges and it is not without some of the same stressors, right? They're present. But what it is now is I'm more able to kind of attend to myself on a routine basis versus that I do feel like, I'm happy to put that chapter to bed. There were a lot of great lessons learned. We did a lot of great work and I do view it as a success. And it's complicated emotionally because it really taught me how easy I still am after going to grad school, after being a practicing clinician for 15 years, how easy it is for me to still emotionally abandon myself when the going gets tough. And I think that's a lesson for all of us. We all fall off the horse. It's not about falling off, it's about how quickly you get back on.
Well, and it's important that we call out that not many people are taught how to even get on the horse.
For
And
sure.
I think that's part of what we hope to deliver with our business sprouting change. We are living in a really weird time from a human behavioral standpoint of having different levels. I hate using emotional IQ, but it's a thing, it's a theory, and it represents the concept well of like, I think we all have different levels right now in our society of like what's expected in your emotional IQ and how we talk about these things. And that plays into the inability for us to be able to be vulnerable in these places and to talk about it.
No, for sure. One of the biggest lemons in the room we have to acknowledge is that it is a privilege to be taught how to cope. It is a privilege, like I said, to have a
Right.
year to heal and to move into something else like I did. There's a lot of privilege to be unpacked here. It is present and accounted for, and we have to acknowledge that in the conversation. And I do think EQ is a part of this, and EQ has been shown to be somewhat malleable, but like it is also like some people are just born with more. It's like any different type of special intelligence. Some
Totally.
people have more musical intelligence, some people have a language intelligence. Not me. Mein Deutsch ist nicht so gut,
Du hast mich. Thank you, Ramstein.
I think emotional intelligence is the same. It's a type of intelligence,
Right.
but it's only one piece of the puzzle. And what we argue is that you need the emotional endurance. You need to build your tolerance to discomfort, to challenges, and to learning how you cope effectively with them, which avoiding something all the time or doing anything all the time, anytime you have a singular coping skill, it's problematic. If you are only doing that, that is where we get lost in the mix, right?
Right. Right. And can I give a call out to baby steps here? Okay, so
Please.
vulnerable moment here. I suffer from severe anxiety. Everyone knows this about me. I'm a very anxious person. I think it's a superpower when managed effectively, so I don't think it's a bad thing. I hate it. But it's my co pilot in life. But so my husband often jokes about how I'm Bob from What About Bob. And it is a joke in our family. Like, God, you're so Bob today. Like, baby steps. Like, just take life one step at a time. And it is so hard to do. And it goes back to how when you came to me with your thought leadership around conscious coping, and I've never really put it all together until this moment. So this is like the light bulb. That's really what about Bob was, right? It was, Richard Dreyfuss trying to tell Bill Murray, like, you got to take life one step at a time, and you got to improve at the margins and accept the baby steps. And really all he's saying is that if you're consciously aware of what you're up against and you're consciously coping with it, you make it to the next step. And so I just feel it necessary to call out What About Bob. That movie was great in terms of bringing mental health to the mainstream media at that time. So
No,
yeah,
for
you can
sure.
call
I
me
love that
Bob.
movie. I love that
Yeah.
movie. I love that movie, Bob.
It's just so baby steps are important. You got to try it.
Absolutely. I think we all kind of innately know this and simultaneously reject it, which is like such a human thing, you know? Thank you for joining us for this emotional endurance movement conversation. We had so much fun on this one that we kind of forgot to end it. So make sure to like, follow, and subscribe and see if we have an ending next week.